obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Our Parking Industry Podcast. I am Krista Olien, and I'm here with Clyde Wilson and Leigh Thomas. Today, we have our follow-up episode on our Brandon Markey episode. We had a great conversation. Leigh and I and Clyde had the opportunity to hear him present at NPA in 2025, and some of you were probably there. Others of you may have heard him present recently at the IPMI 2026. So if you've had the opportunity to hear Brandon present, you know that he puts on a great presentation. One of the questions that was kind of hidden in our conversation was talking about how he presents and how he develops his presentation. We also heard great conversations about luxury customer service provided in a hospital valet setting, which is kind of an oxymoron, but we hope that it's breaking the industry standard and providing good customer service in those most tender situations. We also heard him talk about security and how being aware of your surroundings is important. There was talk about data and why that's important in managing parking and how you can use it to influence decisions that you make. So we have a lot to cover. I hope you're buckled in, ready to go. And here we go. So one of the first things I want to jump into, just so we can be sure it doesn't get lost in the mix, was how to effectively develop a presentation for the audience that you are presenting to, because that's important. So Leigh, what was one of the takeaways you had from how Brandon develops his presentations and his methodology?
This is an important conversation for us to have in the parking industry because we hear from our clients, our operators, that there's a lot of times that they need something, but they don't know how to ask for the thing that they need. Or sometimes they just know there's a problem, but they don't know how to get a solution. So what I heard Brandon say in those situations is that one of the first steps is to gather the data. Gather the information that explains the problem or the pain point. And then the second step is to know who you need help from. You know, if you're preparing a presentation for stakeholders, that's going to have different motivating points than if you're preparing a presentation for your employees. So step one is gather the important data. Find the numbers that describe what the problem is, and then think about your audience. What is their perspective? What are they currently losing or gaining because of this problem? And then present your material in a way that addresses the mistakes that your audience has in that area. How do our listeners need to be able to communicate their pain points and get the help that they need?
Well, you know, it's something that we brought up many times in the past, of the ability for a parking manager to be able to present a problem and win the challenge. And it's, you know, really, really difficult because it's an important time if you're a parking manager and you have a issue that you're trying to solve and you've got to take it to the people that you report to, and you have to win this. It's a real challenge to be able to prepare yourself for that. And I think in what I've experienced and seen, people tend to overpresent because the person that's listening just doesn't have that much time. And they don't want to know the details. They want to know that you know the details and what you're presenting to them answers the question. So when you say data, we got to get the data, you got to get the data. Getting the data is really for you so that you can now know, when I look at my customer and say, I need you to spend $200,000, you know why. So I don't think the customer really wants to know the details of all the numbers and the car's coming here, the car's coming there, and the equipment's doing this, and how many credit card transactions, and how many this, and how many customers doing this. They want to know that you know all the data and it's going to solve my problem. So the funny thing about doing a presentation is trying to be sure you're as prepared as you can be. You have all the answers, you've done the data research, and then you got to sit down and bring this down to 5 minutes.
And one of the pieces of that is that if you use data to drive your development process, your questions and your asks of your stakeholders or your co-employees, whoever you're presenting to, are based in fact. They're not based in opinion. They're not based in desires. They're based in fact. And that can be a really solid anchor to your presentation. Another piece he said was that his methodology is that he starts with the last slide of his presentation and tends to work kind of backwards. So he knows the finish line before he has even approached the starting line. And everybody works differently in that aspect, but I thought that was a really interesting kind of flip on the traditional way of developing a presentation.
Well, I think that's a Franklin Covey, like 7 Secrets of Successful People or something. One of the tenets
as soon as
is,
you said that, I thought I've heard this before.
Yeah. The tenet is begin with the end in mind. And I think Brandon gave a great example of how to do that.
Right.
I love that.
He did. I thought it was very interesting what he said.
So thinking about data, I'm going to do a little TPN plug right quick. We have a new product coming out called PAQS. It's the Parking Adaptability Quotient software that we are currently developing. And that will help provide parking managers data that they have never had before to help make predictive decisions for future changes that are location specific, data specific, trend specific to their location. So it's going to be a tool that's super informative, super useful, and the application will be there so that then they can take predictive information based in data to help drive the conversations they have with their asset owners or their stakeholders that they're presenting to. And we're really excited about that. So look out for more from TPN with our PAQS program. We'll be at BOMA presenting it. We have newsletters coming out, and we will really be kicking off our marketing campaign soon. So done with that plug now. Let's jump into the biggest subject of this conversation, and that was luxury customer service in a hospital setting. We know that hospitals are unique. The clientele is unique. The way the valet operators have to provide service in those cases is a unique situation. So share about your takeaways from Brandon's discussion and his approach to how he trains his employees in this unique customer service environment.
When I started in the parking business, we were still doing a lot of what's called attendant park because most of the garages that were built in the 50s were not made as self-park garages. So we had to have attendants park everything. And the surface lots downtown, remember, this is my history lesson for the day. Downtowns in the 50s and 60s, through most of the 60s, was the shopping center. There were no shopping malls. Shopping mall didn't come around until the late 60s. It was a big creation. They didn't exist. So downtown was the shopping center. So downtown was a big parking area, much bigger. So the surface lots were all what some people call stack and pack. You had self-park spaces, but you had an attendant that could stack the cars everywhere to get everybody in. All of my older garages were attendant park. The garages you drove in, got out of your car, the attendant took your car. And the exciting thing about that time was they dumped in your car. There was no such thing as customer service. They put it in park and floored it and squealed tires all the way up. And so there with your car, that in the 50s and 60s was a very big part of your income going to paying for cars and everything. You could hear some idiot driving it, squealing tires going up to the garage. So we were a little short on picking up customer service there. Hospitals did not do valet until one hospital decided to do valet parking for free in about 70 something. And then all of a sudden the other hospitals said, well, we have to do it too. And they did it for free, and then gradually started building in charging for it. There are still some out there that are free. So when you are doing this, I think the great thing to relate to is over the podcasts of the last few years, how many people do we know that we've interviewed that said they started in the parking business as a valet? So valet is the 100% customer service. I'm going to hand you my car. I'm going to let you, if you're at a hospital, help me get grandpa out of the other side over there. And I want you to do it with a smile on your face that you really care about us. And so the ultimate customer service, I think, is hospital valet because of all the services that you have to be prepared to do. High-end hotel valet is also all customer service. But there's this other level with the hospital. You have people that they don't have the demanding attitude that we see in a high-end hotel, but they just came out of a doctor's appointment. You as the valet don't know whether it was good or bad. Or they've got grandma with them and it was bad. And you've got to get your car, get her in the car. The valet has to help. One's dealing with the car. The other valet over there can't just stand and look. You've got to get grandma in the car. So the other valet can't just stand over there. They have to come over and very happily help. Oh, let me help with this. Here, we can do this. They have to do those things. So, the success of this is, and I thought about this a lot before we did this presentation, the success of this is, who are you going to hire to do that job? And you have to be really good because you can't put bad people out there. You just don't get a chance to do that. So in the real world, something that we've all talked about, that we're slipping further and further away in the bigger part of the parking business, customer service, hospital valet is the ultimate of who we are in great customer service. And it's also the ultimate challenge of a manager. I mean, you got to get it right. The hospital's going to come back on you if you don't get it right. So you have to be a good manager. And I thought he did a great job of presenting the way he looks at the challenges of a hospital and a hospital valet and training his employees. And one of the most important things he said, and I've thought about this and I may have a little slightly different take on it, but one of the most important things that he said was, you only have 2 minutes or 1 minute and 30 seconds. That customer drives up. You have a smiling face to walk over to the car. You don't know who's in that car at a hospital. It could be somebody that can barely drive. And he mentioned that he had one of his employees had a heart attack when he was walking up to the car. Mary Beth, that used to work for us, had a guy passed out on the steering wheel. So you don't know when you walk up to a car, you don't know what you're getting. So you have to hire people and train people that can just do it automatically. You only have 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, maybe less than that. It just has to be natural to them because they don't get to say, like he said, you don't get to say, how you doing? Because in a hospital, a sizable portion of those answers could be bad. So you don't get to say, hey, good to see you again, Mr. Turner. How are you doing today? You don't get to do that. You have to walk up with confidence. I've got that door. I'm going to get it open. What's inside this car? What am I going to have to deal with? And I've got to smile and say, don't worry, we've got you covered. You're here. We've got your car. You're on your way inside. We're getting grandma out the other side. We've got a wheelchair for her. So that's how that style of valet has to be, which is totally dependent on hiring good employees and doing great training, because the employee, it has to be instinctive. It just has to be second nature how to walk up to that car.
Yeah. And the motivation, you talked about luxury hotels and like high-end restaurants. The motivation for a valet at those is probably, I want to get a good tip, so I'm going to do my very best. Whereas at a hospital, that motivation isn't always there for the majority. I would say probably, 75, 80%. It's not because they're going to get a really big tip. That's not the expectation of the patron that's visiting the hospital, that they're there to get good service and therefore provide a good tip because they're spending money at this fancy place or this high-end establishment. Your training and your motivation has to come from somewhere different, not so that you can make more money that day, but because you genuinely want to do a good job.
Brandon mentioned in his conversation that he does a lot of Forbes training. And I had not heard those words before, so I made a note. And then I spent an embarrassingly long time researching what exactly that means. And Brandon, if you're listening and I am saying this wrong, please send me an email and correct me. But I think he's likely referring to the Forbes Travel Guide, which is an extensive training manual on how to train on excellent customer service. And one of the tenets in that Forbes travel training guide is that you should hire employees not only based on their skills, but mostly based on their emotional intelligence. Because if a person comes to the job able to manage his own emotions and also tend to that in others, you can teach the skills on top of that. But it's very difficult to teach that emotional intelligence to the young people who are likely in your garage walking around and taking care of customers.
It's a great point, Leigh. And it's extremely hard to do that. And it's a really test of a good manager. If you can manage a really tough valet, you're a good manager.
Another thing Brandon said that was interesting and thought-provoking to me is he said that employees often treat customers the way leadership treats the employees. So I feel like there's a two-handed approach here, as we need to train employees to say the right things at the right time, but then management also needs to treat employees with the big amount of dignity and respect that he or she expects from the employees to the customers.
Well, if you have a bad manager, you really don't end up with employees that are great in the really difficult job. They just don't. They go somewhere else.
A lot of his stories exemplified teamwork from the top down, putting on the safety vest and jumping in whenever they were short staffed at different locations. Like, I think just that environment and that teamwork spirit was a part of how they manage and how they manage well. From every person, the financial officer, he gave a lot of examples of scenarios where they've had to really step in and serve a role that might seem below them, but the amount of positivity that probably brought and the kind of reprieve to those on-site employees to have that backup and that support and know that they have it if something happens in the future. That day, it takes stress off of their shoulders knowing that they have management that's willing to do that. And then I'm sure those middle level managers pass that on to lower level employees. And it's just a mentality that the company seems to exemplify through the way Brandon approaches training and management overall.
You cannot manage valet parking if you're not willing to jump in. So I naturally have a story.
Naturally.
Can't help it. One of the first locations that, when I started, I was responsible for a lot of locations that have valet parking or attendant park, as I said earlier. But the location that I actually opened on my first day in the parking business was a fairly high-end hotel. And they were busy, and we had a good staff there, but they did events. So they would have a big, heavy check-in on a Wednesday, do an event Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Saturday morning was the checkout. Sometimes it was Sunday morning was the checkout. And so, I had 60 other locations to worry about. But this one, because it was a hotel, because it was high-end, a high-end valet, I worried about it a lot. So just the timing was perfect. We had a really big checkout on a Saturday morning. And I think it was a Memorial Day weekend, something weekend, right? So I just that morning said, I better drive downtown and do a quick run through of some of my locations just to be sure we've got our act together here before this really hard day starts. Across the street was the Radisson Hotel valet. So I pull in over there. As you pull in through this porte-cochere and you're pointing right at the parking booth with our employee in the booth. And as I drive in, she sees me coming and she starts waving, right? All of our employees decided to take the morning off, all of them.
Oh, no.
And I have 250 cars in a garage stacked, and they're about to come out. So I've valeted 250 cars of a hotel where the event was over and everybody came down.
Which basically means you did 250 sprints inside a parking garage.
Oh yeah. No, there was no other way to get down there. You had to run down the ramp, down to get the cars, move a couple of cars around to get the car in the back out. That's, get that one back up there, get it upstairs, grab the ticket and go find the next one. And it was, a couple hours of flat running, sprinting to do this. I'll also add to that, when I started within my first few days. Monroe Carroll says to me, my advice, stay away from valets. They're terrible. And I said, the first garage you had me open the night I started was a valet garage. And he said, well, we couldn't turn that one down. We had to take it. And I went, yeah, right. So,
oh man,
great. So they are a challenge, and the good managers survive them. The bad managers don't. And it's customer service on every level of a valet, every level. And if you don't have the high level of customer service and you can't hire the right employees, you're going to be totally overwhelmed. And maybe I just told a story on myself that I didn't hire the right employees.
Well, live and learn, Clyde. I really appreciated this conversation with Brandon because I'm thinking about the season of podcasts that we've already dropped. And, I'm thinking about the attorney Scrimeti episode and the episode with Raf Abania at PCI. And then also our conversation with Nick Nicholas about training frontline employees. And for me, those 3 episodes really made me understand how badly the parking industry needs to revitalize its customer service. But I didn't really know how to do that or what good customer service might look like in a valet hospital operation. So Brandon did a great job of not only giving us this knowledge, but also he dropped some really great resources for our listeners. So back to that Forbes training that he mentioned, and I've already talked about in this episode, there is a lot of information out there. It is a great resource if you're needing to teach people how to take care of people. He also mentioned a book called The New Gold Standard, and there's a couple of books by that title. So look for the one by Joseph Michelli. It's the one about the Ritz-Carlton. So just take a look at those. They are really good resources on how to train employees. And then, like Krista mentioned before, if you're looking for better data to make decisions or advocate for your operation to stakeholders, our PAQS software will be released soon. And you should reach out to us if you think that might be a good solution for your operation.
Absolutely. Another interesting piece of Brandon's background was security and the way that plays into an approach that he teaches to his employees about being aware of your surroundings. So not necessarily tackling the bad guy, right? Not necessarily security on its face value, but security in how you're approaching situations, your situational awareness. And one of the things that I appreciated about that is if you're in this hospital valet setting, as the car's driving up, while you're standing there waiting as it approaches, if you're aware of what's going on, not playing on your phone, not joking around with the other valet next to you, if you're situationally aware, you probably can gather so much information just from that car approaching. Who's in the driver's seat? Who's in the passenger seat? Is there more than one person in the car? Are they driving fast? Are they driving slow? Are they late? Are they early? All these different things you can tell just by being situationally aware and engaged in the job that you're performing. So I thought that was one little tidbit that we didn't really have time to talk about today that was important to his background that plays into how he trains today.
I was going to say there's a lot about his background and what he brought forward in his presentation that were really important. He brought up a lot of pieces that were very important. The only final thing I'm going to say is the valet business, hospital and high-end hotel, but overall the valet business in our industry has been our poster child for customer service. On the surface lots and in the garages, we've really struggled with that. And I think we've struggled with that for a long time. And the reason I brought that up is because as we've had the conversation before, we're now dealing with a customer who's going to communicate with us a lot more. They're either purchasing online and then things go wrong. They have to call somebody. They have to get answers. So the customer service level has now moved from the surface lots, garages, attendants into this bigger world of being able to communicate with a wide variety of people who have no ends of different lists of problems. You could talk to people all day long. Once this fully moves over, you could talk to people all day long and never have the same problem twice. And trying to solve that problem within 30 or 40 seconds and have a happy customer. So the customer service is becoming a bigger part of our industry as it moves over to this more intense communication with the customer and the client. So
yeah, unreasonable excellence in 45 seconds. That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And you have to do it.
If you want happy customers, you have to do it.
You want happy customers, you have to do it. So that's where the following Leigh's advice of reading Forbes and becoming a good trainer and understanding what you have to train and what's important, because on the phone, you only have 30, 40 seconds. Should have. Nobody really got on the phone wanting to talk to you all day. They got a problem and they just want to solve it. So far, you've screwed it up and you haven't solved it, so they want it solved.
All right. Well, we have got some excellent knowledge from this episode, and there are definitely some tangible resources coming from both Brandon's suggestions and TPN's new software that's coming out that can help drive those decisions and that training model that you're looking for. So both of those things interacting together can make an excellent customer service approach to training your employees. So we hope that you had a great time listening to this episode. We enjoyed our conversation, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on the next episode of the Our Parking Industry Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
To quote one of the greatest business minds of our time, Charles Munger, he said, "The best thing a human can do is help another human being know more." Here on Our Parking Industry Podcast, we want to provide knowledge and resources. If you heard something that sparked your curiosity in today's episode, please reach out on our socials at TPN Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. See you next time on Our Parking Industry.